Hello and welcome back to Pandemic Playground with Dave. So we have another experiment for you guys, and again it's playing around with doing too much of something, and that today is going to be speed. Alright, so today we're going to play around with testing what is too much speed in Space Engineers. So that's the experiment for today, but of course I set up a few things to do first, and to test the speed I want to crash into things and see what happens at the normal 100 meters per second speed versus unlocking the speed and potentially hitting 1,000 meters per second or even more. So one of my favorite things of course to do is crash into these kind of blocks. I have a 9 width thick block, small grid blocks here. We're going to crash into it and see the damage it does on the stock 100 meters per second. Now, we've seen these before, but we're going to do it again just in case you guys have not seen it in previous episodes or videos that we've created. One of my other favorites is the window panes, so lined up window panes here to crash right into them. And one of my newer favorites is going to be the conveyor junctions because it causes a lot of destruction. And lastly, we're going to crash into a voxel, which is going to be this mountain right over here. Ideally right around this spot. So we're going to do that with our multi-tool vehicle, which is this guy here, which is the welder grinding ship that I use in surviving Europa. Reason why I'm using this, one, is hydrogen, picks up speed a lot quicker. And two, it has a long front, so then the cockpit will likely still be operational and not broken when we crash into these things. And of course, we're going to do this with a tricky camera, so let's get that all set up. Alright, so the idea here is instead of using a second camera, which I was actually planning to do, and I've actually done it before, but the problem is it is extremely laggy for some reason. I think it's this world, this experimental world, so I will be moving to a different, I guess, planet or a sandbox experimental playground, which I believe is going to be Mars. So what I'm going to do here is drive this as quickly as possible, hit the 100 meters per second, switch cameras, and hopefully we can document and view the damage out of it. So in 3, 2, 1, we're going to get going. Right, so that was all 4 destructions of the 100 meters per second speed test. So we have first the blocks. And unfortunately, it did hit the bottom block a little bit. So it didn't go through, but it normally would kind of go through. So we can kind of test it out really quickly just to get a nice little destruction out of it. And probably going to do this as general as possible. Pick up as my speed and just crash right into it. Right on the side here. Wow, that actually kind of merged it into the walls apparently. So that kind of went through. Kind of. Well, actually, there was a hole here in the first place. That's interesting enough. But that's the destruction of going through small grid blocks, solid block. And it looks like kind of things just melted into it. So that's interesting. And of course, the window panes also makes a nice little design. So let's just see from the back. We'll see that it went kind of through it as well. And lastly, the conveyor junctions, which seem to cause the most destruction. But a simple little outline out in the back, but in the front, look at all that. And the ship still flies. So you see all this destruction caused by the ship itself. And lastly, on Voxel's 100 meters per second, it just causes, I guess, a bit of a hole. This one, yep, just a bit of a hole here. And most of this is still intact, fortunately, as you see here. The whole ship is doing pretty well. So now we unlock the speed and see what happens to these items and the voxels. Alright, we are back and we have unlocked the speed. As you see in the jetpack of my own body itself, I can go more than 100 meters per second, which is ideally what we wanted to do. Alright, so if we ever go faster than 100 meters per second, what happens to these walls that I built? Will I go through them? Will it create a bigger destruction hole? Will it stop it? I don't know. So that's what we're testing today in terms of too much speed. So we should probably grab this guy. Actually, going to actually delete these guys really quickly, because we're not going to get a good enough speed from over here. So we may want to go back a bit more. And the attempt here is to try to get maybe 1,000 meters per second, hopefully, but I'm not sure how well I'm going to get to that speed by somewhat of a short distance. So it's going to be very, very hard to aim for the target, especially a small target as those walls over there. So we're going to try our best to do it, but we're probably going to do it with this view here, or first person view, and see how that's going to go. So I might not have the best angle, but we're going to try to see what happens here. Okay, so I think we're good right around here. Without this tree in the way, but I think we're good right around here. We might be able to hit maybe 500 meters per second. Ideally, we want to do 1,000, but it's gonna be rough. It's gonna be a very rough target. So we're gonna try our best to hit it, and we're gonna do it right from here. All right. So in 3, 2, 1, let's see how fast we get from this distance. Okay, we are about 200 meters per second. I'm gonna aim this as good as possible, and I think we might hit this. Oop! Prematurely hit the ground and crash into the wall. So that is interesting, and it blew up everything and skipped. So let's just see what happens to the wall anyways. I lost some speed, but it looks like the whole entire ship is pretty much gone, and it's scattered throughout this wall. So that is significant damage. What's weird is that the front had minimal damage, the back has a lot more. I clipped the bottom of the floor a little bit, so let's try to do that again. Alright, so that was roughly 300 meters per second. Not as fast as I would get to, but we're going to try it once more. And this time I'm going to try my best not clip the ground again, because I flew a little too low, I think. But let's find out what it's going to be now. There we go. I think we hit 450 meters per second and smacked into the wall. It kind of smacked in the same spot, but it caused a lot more damage here, as you can see. So that's interesting enough. So let's see what happens with the window panes. That was close to 500, but still not ideal where I thought it was going to be at 1,000. But that's going to be really hard to aim for such a small target. So I should have made the target a little bit bigger, but unfortunately I didn't have the time to do it. So we're going to leave it as that. So we hit 450 roughly before we smacked into the wall. So I think we should be okay for the most part for the next test. So if we go back up just a little bit more, maybe we hit the 500 mark. But again, it is extremely hard to aim, but we're going to try our best here. $450, and we looks like we went right through the wall and into the back of the mountain or so. Oh wow, it left a little bit of a hole. Yeah, I can't believe the cockpit actually survived that for the most part. But the ship is completely toast. We left some craters back here, but it looks like we went straight through the window pane, so that's interesting. So let's see the damage here. Okay, that's an interesting shape for how I went through it. So if anything, this is the middle, and those are the two arms right here that kind of crashed through, I guess. But it skipped the first layer or two, and then end up breaking the last few layers. So that's weird. So it kind of looked like it just went right through the window panes a bit, but then also crashed right into the mountain. So that's kind of interesting. So I wonder what's gonna happen with conveyor junctions. Conveyor junctions usually causes a lot of damage. So maybe the ship is gonna disintegrate before it even goes through it, if anything. So let's just see how that goes. But that last test we did hit 450 or 451 meters per second, so that's not too bad. But we're gonna continue with that speed because it's causing a decent amount of destruction, which is pretty interesting. In terms of that speed, it is different from going 100 meters per second. It is doing something a little more significant in damage, and it's kind of phasing through it a little bit, it looks like, which is interesting. So I'm going to back up this one. We're going to go through the conveyor junctions, and I think this is going to be a spectacular view. Whoa. Okay, so I'm not sure where I ended up. Oh, wow. Okay, so I hit the bottom, it looks like. I nicked the bottom, so that's going to slow it down a little bit. But the destruction here in the conveyor junction is not too bad. Looks like something just kind of melded right through. Yep, melded right through. Decent amount of damage here. We hit 460, really, I believe. It did lag there, and it kind of slowed down the speed for me so I could see it. So that is 460 on damaging on conveyor junctions. Wish I didn't hit the bottom, but I did. But as you can see here, the difference in damage versus 100 meters per second is slightly different. So this one actually looks a lot bigger than this one here. But again, I did nick the bottom. So the interesting part though is the front looks like it didn't take a lot of damage, but the back looks like it takes more damage. So that's the very interesting piece to it with the speed. When we go faster, we seem to do the damage more in the back than in the front, which is quite odd. The one final test, and that's going against Voxels. Alright, so this final test is to crash right in between the platforms that we created and into the mountain itself and see what happens. I don't imagine it making a bigger crater or anything like that, but I think we're gonna pancake the crap out of this ship. Here we go. So that destroyed the cockpit, I believe. That's how I flew up. And the ship is completely gone. Alright, so we're gonna attempt to go a little bit faster and crash into the same wall. And we're gonna attempt to go as fast as possible, maybe hitting light speed, maybe even ludicrous speed, or maybe going Plaid. So let's see what happens if we do get that fast. I think we're gonna get probably 1,000 meters per second here, which is nowhere close to getting Plaid, but we're just gonna assume we're going to get to this point. Alright, so in 3, 2, 1, we're gonna go ahead and see if we can make it to 1,000 meters per second and see what happens when you crash right into the voxels. It'll be interesting if I hit a wall on the way, but I might not. Let's see, we hit the 450 mark already. I think we are on our way to make the 1,000 mark. Hopefully I don't clip the floor early like I did before. Alright, so we're looking good. We are 800. And boom. That's 800. Okay. That didn't even hit 1,000 meters per second, but we hit 800. And that didn't do as much damage as I thought it would. Interesting. Well, maybe the voxel here wasn't as flat as it should have been. Not too bad. Let's try something else. Alright, so for our final test, I really want to go faster, so why not bring ourselves outside of the planet and go deep, dive deep into this ice lake right there. So I hope we're gonna hit that ludicrous speed now at this range. So we're gonna find out in 3, 2, 1. With the gravity, it's gonna help us push even faster. So maybe we'll hit somewhat of the top speed of the speed mod, which I think was 3,600 meters, or maybe 2,000 something meters per second. But we'll see what this is gonna look like. So we definitely will reach 1,000 meters per second, which is awesome. So we are at 750, 800, 900 coming up right there. We just picked up some gravity, so I think we're going faster. We're at 1,000 meters per second. That's exactly what I wanted. Let's see how much further we can go. And we are about to hit the ground really hard here at 1,400. And we've actually just phased through the world, the planet. So that's interesting, and I'm still going. So where am I headed? Am I heading onto the other side of the planet? Potentially, but I am now at 2,000 meters per second. And now I just believed I phased through the other side of the planet, maybe? No, I don't think we did just yet. I think we are now, since I see the ground coming up, or the leveler here. So I'm going 26,000 meters per second. The world looks crazy right now. Am I in space? No, there's still gravity, so I'm not in space yet. Oh, I think I see the other side of the planet, and we're getting close to 0 meters per second, so that's where it is, and we just phased through. And now we are out of the planet again. So guess too much speed makes you phase through the world, apparently. So that is a bit interesting. No damage whatsoever, but we just warped right through. Right, so it looks like speed and damage does correlate a little bit. So hitting these platforms and the voxels at over 100 meters per second does cause a little bit more damage. Not as much, but we do see that it is phasing through a bit. And of course, when we hit that ludicrous speed, that's when we phase through the entire world or the planet. So that's an interesting conclusion to the experiment. But of course, I want to thank you guys for watching. But before you go, make sure to hit that thumbs up, like the video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.